Good morning, Ignite Church. Good morning. Woo! How many of you guys are excited to be back at church? Come on, that was like two of you guys. There's way more than two people here. How many of you guys are excited to be back at church? Man, we have had such awesome volunteers being able to make it so that we could stream, so that when we weren't allowed to be here, we were still able to give our message, give worship, spread the gospel. But there's nothing like gathering together. Am I right? Is it just me? It's just me. Oh, no. It's, okay, Kevin and Pastor. Okay, there's nothing like coming together. The three of us will just come together next week. That's fine. 2 or 3 are gathered, right? So, for those of you guys that don't know, my name is Mike. I'm the worship director here. I am from Elizabeth, New Jersey. I have a beautiful wife. I have a beautiful 3.5-year-old daughter. And I have my first son on the way coming in November. So I am souped. So it took me a little while, if I could be honest, it took me a little while to connect with him. I wasn't allowed in any of the visits or anything. But thank God he's kind of warmed me up, man. I've been cuddling with him every night. I've been got my head right up on Becky's belly and all. So you hear him moving, and it sounds like Becky's got gas. I have to keep asking her, that was him, right? Do I need to move my head? Because all here's So we are starting our new series, Summer in the Psalms. And I've titled this message, What is Your Psalm? So the definition of psalm is a song. It's a sacred song, pretty much a song of worship. So now my question to you is, why do we worship, right? There are tons of reasons why we worship, but one of them is to grow in our faith. They have songs of declaration that help us kind of proclaim things over our situations. One of them is to get closer to God. One of them is just a way to glorify him, just exalting him, calling him holy, establishing who he is. So I want to bring you to Psalm 139. It's a cool clicker. It says, every single moment you are thinking of me. So this is David. He is talking to God. He's saying, every single moment you are thinking of me, how precious and wonderful to consider that you cherish me constantly in your every thought. Oh God, your desires toward me are more than the grains of sand on every shore. When I awake each morning, you're still with me. So I was reading this book, or I was listening to this book. It's called The Lost Art of Pure Worship. And he started talking about this verse, and he was saying, and I Googled it to look up, if you take a bucket of sand, there are over 2 billion grains of sand in that bucket. Just a bucket. This is saying the grain of sand on every shore. That's a lot more than one bucket. That is billions of buckets. Maybe trillions, gazillions. I don't know what comes after trillions. But that is how his desires are towards me. That's how many thoughts he has about me every day. There's not even milliseconds. There's more milliseconds, or there's less milliseconds in a day than that even offers. So that right there for me is why I worship. We love him because he first loved us, right? So I worship because his thoughts are on me 24/7, more than 24/7, 25/8. Yeah, we just made up our own time there. So the book of Psalms here is written by King David. And for those of you guys that don't know, King David is the standard of worship. So churches all around the world are pursuing a church to worship after the heart of David, it's called. Rick Pino and Jose Diaz, they have a ministry called Heart of David where they're teaching people how to worship and how to come into his presence. People's desire is to worship like the man who wrote this book. And this guy was not perfect by any means necessary. But I'm going to tell you what was so different about David. His honesty. David never tried to cover up where he felt spiritually. He was completely honest with where he was. When he was upset, he told God he was upset. When he was okay, he told God he was okay. When he was in battle, he told God he was in battle. And that is the worship that we need to bring forth to God. Honest worship. That's the worship he's looking for. So I have four different ways of worship that kind of fit into our everyday life, psalms of worship. And the first one here is a hymn. So a lot of people think that hymns are like these old songs that were written back in like biblical times and stuff like that. And most of the time, our worship comes from the Psalms, as a matter of fact. But these hymns, the hymn means pure praise. So it's when our worship and our relationship with God is untroubled. We're on good terms. Now, you guys can probably front, and that's okay, but my relationship with God is not always on good terms. So there are times when I'm not singing hymns. But we're going to talk about hymns right now. So this is when our relationship is untroubled, when we have complete and total faith, when everything is pretty much going well, and we are glorifying his name. So Psalm 23 is one of those that says, the Lord is my shepherd. Here, I'm going to actually pull it up here. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. This is a song that we sing because we have all that we need. And, you know, shepherd from Upper Room, it's not an older song, but that's a hymn. It's, God, you are my rock, my shepherd. Like, I shall not, even though I walk through the valley of death, of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. That is glorifying him. So when we're in that place where we're untroubled and we're feeling good, that's where we sing our hymns. And now each and every moment of our life is a song of worship, is a sacrifice of worship to God. So if you're in this stage, you are singing hymns, and we need to be okay with that, right? So now I really want to focus on I have all that I need. A lot of us don't know the difference between what we need and what we want. And it really all depends on the season that we're in. There are times when I don't know the difference between what I need and what I want. And if we're not careful, this scripture is applying to us and we don't think so, because we're not getting exactly what we want, so we feel like we're lacking. So we feel like we're not in a place where we can glorify God because he didn't give me exactly what I want. And if we're not careful, we can miss the fact that we have everything that we need. See, God's not about giving you what you want. He's about giving you the tools that you need for a certain situation. You may not understand why you're given those tools. You may not understand why you're going through what you're going through. But I promise you, whatever you're going to learn and whatever you're going to take from that is what you need for that next stage. So if we're not careful, we can miss what we need. Pastors told that story where there's a man drowning in the ocean, and they send a boat, and he says no. They send a raft, they send a plane, and the guy keeps saying no. He dies, and it's like, God, where were you? He's like, well, I sent all this stuff, and you said no. It wasn't what the guy wanted. The guy wanted God to physically come down, grab his hand, and yank him out of the ocean. But in reality, what he needed was a boat, a plane, a raft, literally anything to get him out. And he declined it because it wasn't what he wanted. He allowed his mind to dictate what he wanted instead of God. And if we're not careful, we could find ourselves falling into the same place. So this is going to lead me into my next form of worship. It is called lament. This is a prayer offering of hurting. So it's still worship when we're hurting. Like, this is when our relationship with God is not necessarily at its best. Like I said before, we can lie all we want and say that our relationship with God is perfect all the time. We're okay with everything God does, and that's fine. I'm not. I have my lament seasons as well, where I don't understand, God, what the heck are you doing? This makes no sense to me. And David was not spared from that either. Here he goes, he says, here I am depressed and downcast, yet I will still remember you as I ponder the place where your glory streams down. From the mighty mountaintops, lofty and majestic, the mountains of your awesome presence. Psalm 42:6. He started his worship with saying, I'm depressed. I'm downcast. He was honest with God. He wasn't saying, God, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm cool. I don't know if any of the men have dealt with this before. My wife, sometimes, when she gets upset, I'm like, babe, what's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. And man, if you don't understand that that's a signal that something is wrong, you are in for a rude awakening quite soon. This is one of those times David didn't go, no, God, I'm fine. I'm cool, whatever. It's fine. He said, no, God, I am depressed and downcast. Yet, I still remember you as I ponder the place where your glory streams. Although I'm depressed and downcast, I still know who you are. Just because I know who you are doesn't change the way I'm feeling right now. So I have to worship through that. Another one, he says, I'm hurting, Lord. Will you forget me forever? How much longer, Lord, will you look the other way when I'm in need? How much longer must I cling to this constant grief? I've endured this shaking of my soul. So how much longer will my enemy have the upper hand? And then he ends it with, it's been long enough. Have you ever been there where you're talking to God and you're like, this has been going on for far too long? I want to tell you right now and encourage you, you're not in a bad place spiritually. You're just worshiping through lament. You're worshiping out of a place of hurt, and that's okay. That's your communication with God. You're letting God know, I feel like you've forgotten me. It doesn't change the plan. It doesn't change what God's going to do, but it brings forth honesty. It allows you to be honest with yourself. You can't be taken out of where you are unless you're honest with where you are. I can't be taken out of a frustrated place if I don't believe I'm in one. Right? For AA, the first thing you have to do is admit that you're an alcoholic before you can change. You can't get taken out of that until you admit that you're in there. I can't leave the church unless I'm in the church. But if I don't believe I'm in the church, I'm never going to leave. I'm never going to walk out the door and go home because I don't believe I'm here. So if you don't believe that you're in a hurting place, if you don't understand and come to terms with the fact that not everything smells like roses, not everything is beautiful all the time, then you're going to be stuck. You're not going to be able to move on to this next part. Actually, lament turns into thanksgiving. Now, there are multiple psalms all through here that actually say song of thanksgiving. Psalm 136 is one of them where actually every single verse starts with give thanks to the Lord because yada, yada, yada. But give thanks to the Lord. This thanksgiving is the way that you worship when God has taken you out of something, when God has done something for you. But you can't be taken out of somewhere if you weren't there to start. So sometimes we get a little frustrated that our lament worship, where we're in our hurt place and we feel like it's been long enough and we feel like God's forgotten about us. Sometimes it feels like we've been there too long, right? It's been long enough. But I'm telling you, that's okay, because what's next is Thanksgiving. God is going to come through with what is next, but you have to be okay with going through that season of lament. If you don't accept it, if you don't harness it and worship through it, you'll never hit this part. And some of us, we get a little bit on shaky ground there, and it's like, man, I can't worship like this. A lot of us, I've heard this I'm just going to call it a lie, that you can't worship when you're going through certain things. Like, that's not true. That's like, listen, don't even get me started. I'm not even going to do it. But that's not true. That's not true. If you're in a downcast place, that should be the time where you're worshiping the most. How are you going to tell me I can't worship through that? Like, that just makes no sense. Sorry, I've heard it too much. Like, I'm going through a time, and they're like, oh, you shouldn't really be worshiping. Okay, maybe I shouldn't be leading a corporate group of people into worship if I'm not where I need to be. That doesn't mean I stop. Like, that doesn't mean I don't worship. Like, this stage means nothing. I'm sorry. The stage doesn't determine where your worship is at. You're not more holy, or your worship is not better because you're up here. Quite frankly, sometimes it's the opposite. You put on a good enough face and you can get up here. But it's that, I'm going to go back to Thanksgiving. I don't know why I just went off on that little tangent there. I'm sorry. So we thank God for the stage right now. Yeah, that just bothers me. I'm sorry. Like, you can't tell me I can't worship. Worship is what I need. Worship is our communication, right? Like worship is how when my soul and my mind is telling me one thing, how else am I supposed to get that to align with what God says? Like, how am I supposed to take my fleshly thoughts, my fleshly desires, how else do you get them in line? Like, you have all these people in the Bible who have wrote down their experiences. David, hundreds of chapters, well, 100 and, I don't even know, 100 and something. There's Psalm 136 was the one of Thanksgiving, and there's a whole bunch more chapters to go. So there's more than 100 of helping people worship through what they're going through. Like, at no point in time do they say you can't worship because you don't fit in. Like, you don't fit the mold of what a worshiper is supposed to be like. And I feel like a lot of us have been told that lie. Worship has to look a certain way. I've been told the lie. Worship has to look a certain way. If you clap a certain way, if you bop your head a certain way, like, you're not doing it right. But when I gave that up, I'm going to tell you, that was the most freeing worship experience I've ever had in my life. I don't care what I look like up here. Like, I watch these people like Upper Room, and they're like kicking their feet all over the place. They're doing karate on stage. And I'm like, man, like David, let's go back to David. David tore off his kingly robe to worship. Like, he took off the title. He took off what the world was calling him. He was like, nah, that's not what it's about. I'm going to come humbly before the throne, and I'm just going to worship. I don't care what I look like. I don't care if my king robe gets dirty on the ground. I don't care if my crown falls over there. I'm going to fall on my knees and worship. You know why? Do you know why he's got that? Because he was taken through something, and he has something to be thankful for now. He's worshiping with thanksgiving. Give thanks to the Lord. Because you're not where you were a week ago. You're not where you were 10 years ago. As a matter of fact, give thanks in advance because you're not going to be where you are now in 10 years. You're not going to be where you are now in the next 3 to 4 months. Like, you're not going to be stuck at the same job, making the same amount of money. You're not going to be stuck with one house. You're going to have 10 houses. Like, give thanks for that in advance. Although you may not see it right now, there's a declaration that has to be made. You have to, I spoke about it on Thursday. Sing anyway. Shout anyway. Your words. Use your vocal cords. They were given to you for a reason. And if you don't use them, you won't see anything happen. And a lot of us are stuck being quiet and don't understand why we are still where we are. A lot of us are so afraid to sing because of what we might say, or because of what it might sound like to somebody else. Everything needs to be politically correct now. So you're afraid to worship from here because you're going to offend somebody, or somebody might take it the wrong way. I'm sorry. I'm not about that life. Like, worship is not for you. The worship is for me and God. That is it. If you take offense to it, I'm sorry. But worry about your worship, not mine. Like, that's it. So, let me tell you. Get me started. So this is going to bring me to actually my last point. And this is really the point that I've been most excited for. Because God was really ripping me on this one on Friday. I started my new job on Friday, or on Monday. And on Friday, I probably spent almost like all of my day studying and like worshiping. And every time they'd come into the office, I'd like change tabs real quick so that they wouldn't see that I had like a Bible app open. They'd think I was doing work. I don't have anybody from work on my social media yet, so I don't have to worry about that getting there. But so it's going to bring me to my last point, warfare. Now, we tend to fall under this misconception that worship needs to be pretty. No screaming and shouting maybe, or anything like that. But this is worship is made for warfare. Like, let's look what David wrote here in Psalm 144. Praise the Lord who is my rock. He trains my hand for war and gives my fingers skill for battle. So now this reminds me of Jericho and Joshua. Now I know this series is called Summer in the Psalms. I'm going to jump out of Psalms for a second. So, sorry, don't get mad at me. But, so now it starts here. The Lord tells Joshua, you're going to go into Jericho. But before you do that, I want you to march around one time for 7 days. And on the seventh day, march around it 7 times. And you're going to blare this horn and shout as loud as you can, and then the city's going to be yours. So here we go. Joshua tells all his people, boom. So now this is Joshua 6:16. The 7th time around, as the priests sounded the long blast on their horns, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the town. Now, like I was saying before, the Lord hadn't given them the town yet. They were worshiping from a place of this is what's going to happen. Like, the Lord has given us this town, so we're going to shout anyway until it happens. So now we come further down to verse 20. It says, when the people heard the sound of the ram's horn, they shouted as loud as they could. Suddenly, the walls of Jericho collapsed, and the Israelites charged straight into the town and captured it. So God didn't tell Joshua, send your best soldiers after this wall. He said, send your worshipers. I want your worship to go first. You send the priests with their horns, and the loud sound of worship and the cry of the people is what is going to take down those walls, not your most skilled soldiers. As a matter of fact, we come on over. It's not changing. Can you change to the next one, please? I don't know why I said it. There's one after it. Joshua 6:7. There's not? Okay. Joshua 6:7. It says, then he gave, so this is right before they start marching. Joshua gives the order. He says, he gave the order to the people, march around the town, and the armed men will lead the way in front of the ark of the Lord. So he didn't send the army to the wall. So for those of you guys that don't know, the ark of the Lord was something that represented God's presence. He told the army to surround that, to lead the way for the ark of the Lord. So you have these trained soldiers, these soldiers that are trained to take down towns and to kill pretty much. And you're telling them, you're not going to be the ones that takes over the city. As a matter of fact, you're going to be the ones that guard my presence. Worship is going to take down the walls. The army is going to guard the presence. See, even in war, the presence was the main objective. Even when it was time to capture a town and take over, God sent his most skilled people to guard the presence. And a lot of us get so focused on the fight, we forget about the presence. And we get so focused coming against everything that's in front of us that we forget what's for us and what's behind us and what is pushing us forward. But Joshua's not going to allow that to happen. Joshua's going to say, that's fine. I'm going to send my worshipers, but I'm going to put my army around the presence, because without the presence, nothing's going to happen. There's going to be no walls that come down. We could shout as much as we want. We can make as much noise. We could blow the ram's horn as much as we want. We can swing our swords as much as we want. But if the presence is not there, nothing's going to happen. So when we're in our worship, when we're in our warfare, the presence needs to be the focus. I'm not going to focus on what I'm attacking. I'm going to focus on who's defending me. I'm not going to focus on what is coming against me. I'm going to focus on who is for me, right? Like, his presence is all around us. His presence is inside of us. So we don't have the Ark of the Covenant that we need to carry around everywhere. As a matter of fact, you just have you. Like, you have your heart. That is where the presence of God is. So if you protect what's in here, you'll never lose. It doesn't matter how many people they have, or it doesn't matter how many spirits try to come against you, or like addiction, or what. It doesn't matter. As long as you hold on to the presence here, nothing can tear you down. So I want the worship team to come up. Our battle is not against flesh and blood. And we get so focused on the people that are upsetting us that all of a sudden we turn against the people. Like, we turn against the very people God created and put around us because they're bothering us. But again, it's not flesh and blood that we're fighting. We're fighting the spirits. So, like, God's got it. His presence is right in here. So if you guys could just stand all over the room, I want to do this. What stage of worship are you in? We talked about hymns, where your relationship with God is not trouble. We talked about lament, where it is a little trouble. We talked about thanksgiving, where God takes you out of it. And we talked about warfare, where you're in the middle of a battle. I can tell you this right now. No matter what you're going through right now, it falls under one of those 4 categories. And the common thing that all 4 of these categories has is worship. You're going to worship through that. So let's be honest with ourselves for a second. What stage are we in? If you're in a lament stage where everything's hurting and you're not feeling right with God, that's fine. Worship through that. If you feel like you're battling, that's fine. Worship through that. If you're thankful, be thankful. Worship through that. The song that I have Mirta going into, it says, when I move my body, when I move my feet, when I open my mouth, then the darkness flees. Worship is what makes everything right again. Worship flees the dark. When you move your body, when you move your feet. So all over this room, as the band begins to play this and they begin to sing this, move your body as an act of faith. No matter what stage or season you're in, move your body, move your feet, open your mouth. Begin to declare those things that are not as though they were. Begin to declare victory where you are. Begin to declare how great He is. Just open your mouth, move around. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on. When I move my body, when I move my feet, when I open my mouth, everything that's trying to come against me loses its power. Come on, come on. So God, right now as we go into this worship, God, I pray for a fresh fire inside each and every one of us to release the worship. Whatever stage we are in, God, we are going to give it everything we have, God. We are going to lift our voice. We're going to move our body. We're going to move our feet. We're going to shout from the rooftops that you are good and the victory is ours. Come on, church. Come on, my shout is a weapon. Come on, there's something thick in the atmosphere this morning. My shout is a weapon. Come on, lift your voice, lift your voice. My shout is a weapon. My shout, my shout. Well, we're going to keep going in worship here because this is just super thick right here. But I want to thank our Facebook Live audience for joining us, guys. We appreciate you, we love you, and we will see you on Thursday. Hopefully see you on Sunday. Make sure you register. But right here in this room here.
Hey guys, thanks for watching our service. If you felt encouraged, built up, and edified, we want you to share this page, share the service. We also want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Instagram. You can also follow us on Facebook. Send it out to your friends, family, auntie, uncle, everyone. And if you missed any of our services, you can also check us out on YouTube, and you can catch up to all the video playlists, and you can see all the recent messages. And we also want to say thank you for your faithful giving. Because of your giving, we're allowed to do the things that we do here, and you're able to see us live, even on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. So keep giving, and we thank you for everything you're doing. Be blessed. We love y'all. I bless y'all.